New York City never truly sleeps. Beneath its shimmering skyline and chaotic subway tunnels hides 1,000 stories, and among them, one began on a rain-soaked afternoon in Manhattan. It had been drizzling since dawn. Jasmine Carter adjusted the hood of her oversized denim jacket, shielding her curly hair from the stubborn mist as she weaved through the crowd. The sidewalks were slick, gleaming under traffic lights, and the honking of yellow cabs formed a restless urban symphony. She wasn't just walking. She was chasing time late again from dropping her twins off at school in Harlem and rushing downtown for her housekeeping job at a boutique hotel. With every step, her soul splashed against the concrete, leaving faint echoes that seemed to disappear under the weight of the city. Across the street, a man in a sharply tailored navy coat stepped out of a black town car. He adjusted the collar of his Burberry scarf and pulled a leather briefcase from the passenger seat. His strides were measured, his presence cutting through the bustle like a silent authority. Ethan Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Global, heir to one of the oldest fortunes on Wall Street, and perhaps the most eligible bachelor in the city. He was late too. But unlike Jasmine, he didn't rush. He never had to. Jasmine reached the corner, her gaze briefly catching the bright glint of a phone slipping from someone's coat pocket. A pickpocket. She saw it unfold like a scene she'd seen 100 times before. The thief moved quickly, snatching the phone and ducking into the crosswalk, merging with the crowd. Most people wouldn't notice. Most people wouldn't care. But Jasmine wasn't most people. She crossed without hesitation, dodging umbrellas and murmured protests. Her legs moved fast, instincts sharp. Years ago, she'd trained as a boxer in a different life. That muscle memory never left. With a swift pivot and one clean move, she grabbed the thief's wrist, twisted it gently, and snatched the phone back. "You want to try that again?" she said, her voice calm but firm. The thief blinked, stunned. A second later, he wriggled free and vanished down the alley. Jasmine exhaled, then turned the phone in her hand, trying to find its owner. "Excuse me," she said to the man in the navy coat, who was now just a few feet away. "Is this yours?" Ethan looked down at her, surprised. Her hoodie was damp, her jeans were frayed at the knees, and yet something about her radiated command. He reached for the phone. "Yes. Thank you." Their fingers brushed. Jasmine quickly withdrew her hand. "She said you should keep a better grip on it next time," offering a slight, playful smirk. Ethan tilted his head, intrigued. "Most people wouldn't have noticed," he said. "Most people aren't me," she replied. That smile. Ethan hadn't expected it. Not here. Not now. But it stirred something quietly unfamiliar. "You saved me from losing a phone filled with half my empire," he said with mock seriousness. "How should I repay you? By not standing in the middle of the sidewalk," she said. She stepped around him. He let out a chuckle, soft and rare. As he turned to walk away, he watched her disappear into the crowd. A stranger, a mystery, and yet unshakably memorable. Later that night, Jasmine stood in the small kitchenette of her one-bedroom apartment in Harlem, watching over a bubbling pot of soup while her twins Tyson and Nia colored at the table. Her mind kept drifting to the moment on the street. The man's eyes, his quiet confidence, the absurdity of the moment. She didn't know his name, but somehow he lingered like the smell of rain on asphalt, uninvited but impossible to forget. Across the city, Ethan sat in the penthouse suite of the Blackwell building. Glass walls wrapped around him, showcasing the skyline in all its glowing arrogance. But tonight, the lights outside blurred and the room felt emptier than usual. He picked up his phone, unlocked it, and scrolled to the security app. Jasmine's face flashed briefly on the corner feed of his building's surveillance camera. He'd caught her just before she turned away. "Who are you?" he murmured. He should have asked. The next morning, Jasmine received a call from her hotel supervisor. "We're letting you go, Jasmine. I'm sorry, too many late arrivals. We need consistency." Her throat tightened. She thanked them politely, then hung up. No job. 2 kids. Rent due. The weight came crashing in. Tyson walked in, rubbing his eyes. "Morning, Mommy. You look sad." She knelt, pulling him close. "No, baby. Just thinking." Nia looked up from her cereal. "We can help. We're smart." Jasmine smiled through the ache. "Yes, you are. And that means Mommy has to work a little smarter now." 2 days later, Jasmine found herself standing outside the towering lobby of Blackwell Global. She held a printout in her hand. Now hiring security staff, competitive pay, benefits. She inhaled, exhaled, and stepped inside. The receptionist looked up. "May I help you?" "I'm here for the security position." A smirk. "Do you have prior experience?" "I'm a former amateur boxing champion." The woman raised a brow. "Really? Really?" Jasmine stood before a panel of HR staff and 2 bodyguards 2 hours later. They looked skeptical. "You'll be sparring with our lead guard, Marcus." "To gauge your skills," the woman said. Marcus was built like a tank. Jasmine cracked her neck and stepped onto the mat. The bell rang. Marcus lunged. Jasmine ducked. A twist. A feint. A jab. A clean block. He stumbled. By round 3, he was panting. Jasmine barely broke a sweat. From the upper balcony, Ethan watched it all. "That's her," he whispered. His assistant nodded. "Should I offer her the job?" "No," Ethan said. "Pause. I will. Personally." Jasmine sat in a private conference room an hour later, sipping lukewarm water. The door opened. And there he was. "You," she said, blinking. "Me," he replied, smiling. "Ethan Blackwell, CEO, phone loser." She laughed, despite herself. "So this is your empire, part of it. And I'd like you to help protect it." She narrowed her eyes. "Why me?" He leaned forward. "Because most people walk away. You don't." Silence stretched between them, charged and unspoken. Then she smiled. "Fine. But I don't do coffee runs or dry cleaning." He grinned. "Neither do I." Outside the building, as she walked toward the subway, Jasmine felt a spark flicker in her chest. She'd landed a job she never thought possible in a world she didn't belong to. Yet somehow, it felt like the first step into something more. Back inside the tower, Ethan stood by his office window, watching raindrops race down the glass. There was something about her, and for the first time in a very long time, Ethan Blackwell looked forward to Monday morning. The morning light streamed through the steel and glass bones of Manhattan, casting golden shards across the tiled floors of Blackwell Global. Jasmine Carter, dressed in a crisp navy uniform, 2 sizes too big, stepped into the elevator. Her heart beat steady and measured, but nerves curled in shadows underneath it. It was her first official day. She stood among strangers in tailored suits, their badges gleaming, their eyes fixed ahead. No one greeted her. No one whispered hello. And she liked it that way. Quiet was safe. Invisible meant protected. But she wasn't invisible for long. A voice echoed from the hall when the elevator stopped at the executive floor. "Ms. Carter, this way." Ethan Blackwell's assistant was sharp-cheeked, suited, and professional. "Mr. Blackwell would like you stationed just outside his office until further notice." Jasmine blinked. "Doesn't internal security usually handle that?" "You're internal now," the woman said. And he was specific. The office hallway was a world apart from the bustling lower floors. It smelled of cedarwood success and a faint note of citrus. The air was cooler. still, like it knew its worth and didn't care to prove it. Jasmine took her place beside the frosted glass doors, eyes scanning instinctively. Beyond them, Ethan paced in front of his desk phone, to his ear, a crystal tumbler untouched beside him. His gestures were smooth, controlled, but his shoulders were tight. She could feel it. Minutes passed. Then hours. By noon, Jasmine had memorized every tile in the hallway, every sound of passing heels and muffled conversations. Her back was straight, mind alert, but something shifted when the doors behind her opened. "Jasmine." Ethan's voice was low, almost amused. "Join me for a moment." She stepped in, unsure if she was supposed to salute or nod. Instead, she stood tall. "Everything all right, Mr. Blackwell?" He gestured to the couch. "Please sit." She hesitated. "I'm on duty." "You're always on duty." "Humor me." She sat. He poured 2 glasses of water, handing her one, like it was champagne. "Thank you." For the phone. Again. He shook his head at showing up. That startled her. "Most people don't last here," he continued. "They get lost in the shine, the pace, the politics." "I'm not most people," she said quietly. He smiled. "I'm starting to believe that." That afternoon, Jasmine escorted Ethan to a press event at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Security detail. Nothing more. Or so she told herself. But as the limo pulled up to the limestone steps, flashbulbs exploded. Jasmine stepped out first, scanning the crowd, noting positions, measuring threats. When she opened Ethan's door, the roar of the press swelled. "Mr. Blackwell, over here. Are the merger rumors true? Who's your bodyguard? A new model." Jasmine didn't flinch. But Ethan glanced at her, saw the steel in her eyes, and offered her his arm. Not out of chivalry, out of respect. "Shall we?" She took it. Inside, the murmurs followed them. She doesn't look like his usual type. Is this a stunt? Is she the reason he canceled dinner with the Walcott heiress? Jasmine caught it all. But she kept her face still. Her purpose was protection, and she wouldn't let whispers bend her. Ethan leaned close. "Ignore them." She didn't answer, because she didn't need to. The next morning, Jasmine woke to a knock at her door. Tyson and Nia still slept in their bunk beds, their tiny breaths soft against the whir of the window AC. She opened the door cautiously. A delivery man handed her a slim black box. From Mr. Blackwell. She signed, closed the door, and opened it. Inside, a perfectly tailored security uniform, deep midnight blue, stitched initials at the cuff. And a note. "Figured you deserved something that fit. EB." Jasmine stared at it, then at her reflection in the hallway mirror. Something inside her shifted, a stitch undone, a thread pulled free. That week, Jasmine fell into rhythm. She learned the layout of the executive wing like the back of her hand. She could sense Ethan's moods before he spoke. She noticed how his smile never quite reached his eyes during meetings, and how he paused longer than necessary when she laughed. On Thursday, she brought her twins to the company daycare. "My apologies, Ms. Carter," the receptionist said. "We only allow employees with managerial clearance to register family members." Before Jasmine could respond, Ethan walked in. "They're with me," he said. "Add them under my profile." Jasmine stiffened. "You didn't need to do that." "Yes, I did." He looked at Tyson and Nia, both wide-eyed. "Hi there. I'm Ethan." Tyson looked him up and down. "Your mom's boss. Guilty as charged." Nia tilted her head. "Are you rich?" Ethan blinked. Depends on who you ask." "Are you nice?" He smiled. "I try to be." "Good. Mommy needs more nice people." Jasmine stared at the floor, cheeks burning. But Ethan just chuckled. "Then I'll do my best." That night, Jasmine walked home slower than usual. The wind tangled in her hair. The city felt different, softer. Or maybe she was letting herself feel it. She stopped at the corner bodega, picked up milk bread and the lollipop Nia always requested. As she reached for her wallet, the clerk waved her off. "It's covered." "Excuse me, a man came by earlier, said he'd pay for whatever you picked up today. Tall, clean cut, smelled like money." Jasmine blinked. She stepped outside and looked up. Somewhere above behind those glass towers, he sat at his desk, probably sipping scotch and pretending it wasn't all intentional. She shook her head and laughed, then paused, because across the street a black SUV had been idling for too long. Jasmine requested a security scan of the building's parking logs the next day. "Why?" the head of staff asked. "Just a feeling," she said. The results came back. The same black SUV had followed Ethan's car for 3 days. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to raise questions. She reported it directly. "You think someone's watching me?" Ethan asked, standing by his office bar. "I think someone's watching us." He turned. Something flickered in his eyes. Not fear. Not exactly. "Thank you," he said. "Just doing my job." He stepped closer. "Is that all it is, Jasmine?" She met his gaze. "Isn't it?" Later that evening, as the city fell into dusk and the skyline turned amber, Jasmine sat by the window in her apartment, watching the lights flicker on like stars. Tyson crawled into her lap. Nia leaned against her arm. "Mommy?" "Yes, baby. Why do you look outside so much now?" Jasmine smiled, but her eyes stayed distant. "Because sometimes," she whispered, "the world starts to look like it's changing, and you don't want to miss it." Across the city, Ethan stood on his balcony. In his hand was a photograph. Grainy. Surveillance. A man leaned against the SUV, and in his hand was a worn photo of a young Jasmine in boxing gloves. Underneath it, a note scrawled in ink. "She owes me, and I'm coming to collect." The hum of the espresso machine echoed across the sleek, glass-paneled break room on the 52nd floor of Blackwell Global. Morning sunlight cast fractured beams through the tall windows, illuminating flecks of dust suspended like secrets in the air. Jasmine Carter stood by the far wall, her hand wrapped around a paper cup, as she stared into the rich brown swirl of coffee. Her uniform fit her now. Everything did. But something about the stillness this morning felt off. Her instincts didn't whisper. They screamed. She turned quickly, scanning the corridor. Empty. Until Ethan appeared. "Morning, Jasmine. Sleep okay?" His voice was smooth as silk, but laced with subtle concern. She nodded. "Sleep comes in borrowed pieces." He paused beside her, brushing an invisible crumb from his sleeve. The security team traced the SUV. Registered to a shell company in New Jersey. No known owner. Jasmine's eyes darkened. That means someone with money and motive. He studied her, then leaned against the counter. "You always assume the worst. I didn't get this far hoping for the best." He admired that. Her caution. Her realism. She wasn't the kind of woman who let herself be swept away, and yet he found himself wanting to sweep her away anyway. "Let's take a drive," he said suddenly. She blinked. "Now, lunch meeting downtown. We'll go early. You ride up front." The city blurred past them in elegant streaks of silver and motion. Jasmine kept her eyes trained on the road, one hand resting near the concealed weapon beneath her blazer. Ethan, in contrast, sat reclined, unbothered. "Do your twins ever ask about their father?" he asked, breaking the silence. The question dropped like a pebble in still water. She hesitated. Sometimes, she admitted. "But they've learned not to expect answers. I'm not ready to give." "You don't owe me an explanation," Ethan said. "And yet you asked." His smile was brief. "Curiosity is my worst habit." No. Your worst habit is control. The car fell quiet again, but electricity snapped in the silence. They arrived at the restaurant, a quiet rooftop garden, tucked above Fifth Avenue, hidden behind ivy walls and antique ironwork. Ethan had reserved the space not for business, but for quiet. Jasmine sensed it the moment they stepped out. So, no clients, she asked. No clients, he confirmed, just fresh air. She arched a brow. Is this your version of a date? Is it working? She didn't answer. They ate quietly, letting the moment pass. Then Jasmine stiffened. A man at a distant table, alone, face shadowed beneath a flat cap. She recognized the stillness of a predator. We need to leave. Now. Ethan glanced up instantly, reading the change in her tone. No questions, just movement. They exited through the back down the fire escape. Jasmine didn't run. She maneuvered. Once inside the car, she exhaled. I know that man. Not his name. But I know his posture. His eyes. He used to follow me. Years ago. Ethan leaned forward. Why didn't you ever report it? Because the world doesn't take women like me seriously. A black woman from Harlem with 2 kids and a messy past, I learned to survive without a rescue. He stared at her. Then it's time someone believed you. Back at her apartment, Jasmine found an envelope slid beneath her door that evening. No markings. Just her name scrawled in aggressive ink. Inside was a photo. Her. Younger. Sweaty. Gloved. From her underground boxing days. Beneath it, one sentence. Your debt isn't paid, Jasmine. I haven't forgotten. She sat down slowly. The air thickened. A whisper of a name scratched at her memory. Damien Knox. A promoter. Dangerous. Connected. The man who'd once offered her $5,000 to throw a fight. She'd won instead. And his sister ended up in the hospital. Jasmine had left that world behind. Or so she thought. The next morning, she handed the photo to Ethan without a word. He read it, folded it. She didn't ask questions, and she wasn't ready to answer. Give me his name. It won't matter. Men like him operate in shadows, so we bring him into the light. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I saw not the CEO, but the man, the protector, the one willing to fight a battle that wasn't his. I'll handle it, she said. We'll handle it, he corrected. That Friday, Jasmine found herself walking the halls of a rehab facility in Brooklyn. She stopped outside a room marked S. Knox. Inside, a woman in a wheelchair stared out the window. Thin, pale, but alive. Shayla. The woman turned slowly. Her eyes widened. Jasmine Carter. The champ. Jasmine lowered herself to a chair. I never meant to hurt you. That fight. I didn't even know you were watching. Shayla nodded slowly. He blamed you for everything. Said you humiliated him. That your win ruined his future. And you, what do you think I think? You did what you had to do. You were cornered. We both were. Jasmine reached for her hand. Is he still watching me? Still sending people? Shayla's gaze dropped. He never stopped. But he's angrier now. You disappeared, built a life, and that makes him dangerous. Back at Blackwell Tower, Ethan met with his private legal team. I want complete surveillance on any associates of Damien Knox. Financial records, assets, known aliases. His lawyer frowned. That could provoke him. He provoked me first. That weekend, Jasmine took Tyson and Nia to the park. It was one of the last warm days before autumn claimed the city. She tried to smile, to breathe, but even laughter felt fragile. Mommy Nia said, suddenly tugging on her sleeve. There's a man over there taking pictures. Jasmine turned sharply. A figure disappeared behind the carousel. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. You have 48 hours. She tightened her grip. Ethan called. Are you okay? She lied. Yes. He didn't believe her. Come to the penthouse. Tonight. Bring the kids. Ethan's apartment was unlike anything Jasmine had ever seen. Marble floors. Soft jazz humming through invisible speakers. A city skyline that felt close enough to touch. I'll sleep on the couch, she said immediately. You'll have the guest room, he replied. And the kids can sleep in mine. Where will you sleep? Wherever I can keep you safe. They stood in silence. Then Jasmine whispered, You don't have to do this. I know. But I want to. Long after the twins had fallen asleep that night, Jasmine stepped onto the balcony. Ethan joined her moments later, a blanket draped over her shoulders. I thought I escaped my past, she said quietly. But you never really do. He looked at her, his voice steady. Sometimes the only way to truly escape is to stop running. She turned. You don't even know what you're getting into. No, he said. I know exactly what I'm walking into. And I'm still here. The following morning, Ethan received a file on his desk. Inside footage. Drones. Documents. Names. Damian Knox. 3 shell companies. Offshore accounts. And recent wire transfers to private contractors in New York. He's not just watching her, Ethan muttered. He's planning something. His assistant knocked. There's someone here to see you. Won't give a name. Says you'll want to hear what he has to say. Ethan looked up. Bring him in. A man in a hoodie stepped in. Weathered. Gaunt. You don't know me, the man said. But I used to fight for Damien Underground Circuit. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Why are you here? Because he put a bounty on her. Jasmine. He wants her out of the picture before the end of the month. Ethan stood. Then we stopped playing defense. The man nodded. I can help, but it'll cost you. Ethan didn't blink. Name your price. That night, Jasmine sat on the edge of Ethan's sofa, watching her children sleep beside a crackling fireplace. He handed her a folder. Everything we need to take him down. She flipped through it. Her hands trembled. You did all this for me. He knelt in front of her. No, not just for you, for them, for the version of us that still believes in something good. Her voice was a whisper. What if I can't protect them? He met her gaze. Then I will. And for the first time in years, Jasmine Carter allowed herself to lean into someone's strength, even if just for one night, even if just for one breath. The rain had returned to New York soft and steady, like a quiet warning. It tapped against the windows of Ethan Blackwell's penthouse in rhythmic murmurs, casting shadows on the walls that danced like uncertain ghosts. Jasmine Carter stood in the kitchen, her fingers curled around a steaming mug of chamomile tea. The silence wrapped around her like a scarf, warm in places, suffocating in others. Naya and Tyson built a fort with couch cushions and imagination in the next room. Their muffled but bright laughter filled the space she hadn't yet dared to claim. Across the kitchen island, Ethan leaned against the counter, sleeves rolled, hair tousled. The raw, unguarded version of him. The one few people ever saw. You didn't sleep, he said. Jasmine didn't deny it. Neither did you. He looked at her carefully. You know I won't let him touch you. I know. Her voice was low. But that doesn't mean he won't try. A silence settled deeper than before. Please tell me what you're afraid of, Ethan said gently. Jasmine turned to the rain-washed window. Her reflection looked back at her strong, worn, unbroken. I'm not afraid for myself, she whispered. I'm so scared of what I'll become if I have to go back to who I used to be to protect the people I love. By midday, the penthouse buzzed with quiet activity. Security experts reviewed floor plans. Surveillance specialists set up motion detectors, and Ethan's legal counsel combed through prior case files involving Damian Knox. Jasmine watched it all in quiet disbelief. She had grown used to surviving with scraps. Now she stood at the center of a fortress. Your children, Ethan said, approaching her with a tablet. I want to assign them a personal escort, someone they'll wish to trust. She hesitated. They'll ask questions. Then we'll tell them the truth. Not everything. Just enough to make them feel powerful and not afraid. Jasmine met his gaze. He never looked away. That afternoon, a knock came at the door. Unexpected. Unscheduled. It was an older woman, dressed carrying a plastic bag of groceries. Her eyes, sharp, tired, familiar. Mrs. Carter, the housekeeper, called. Jasmine stepped into the hallway and froze. Mom! The woman's gaze flicked to Ethan and the children peeking from behind the doorway. I had a feeling you were here, she said. Ethan stepped aside without a word, giving them space. Jasmine led her mother to the den and closed the door softly behind them. Why are you here? Jasmine asked. To see my grandchildren? The woman replied, sitting slowly. To see you. You never came before. You never asked me to. Jasmine swallowed. That's not how this works. Her mother's eyes softened. I heard rumors about Damian, about the threats. And for once, I thought I should be a mother first, not my pride. The walls Jasmine had spent years building didn't crack, but they shifted. Thank you, she whispered. That night, Ethan returned from a private meeting. His jaw was tight, his fingers clenched. What happened? Jasmine asked. I met with someone from the Attorney General's office. They've been building a case on Damian for years, but need more. More what? More evidence. Witnesses. Financial records. A trail they can take to court. Jasmine nodded slowly. Then we give it to them. He looked at her. It means putting your name on the record and going public. And not just you. Your past. The underground fights. The night you disappeared. Jasmine closed her eyes. She thought of her children, their future. Let's do it, she said. Ethan studied her. Are you sure? No, she admitted. But I've stopped waiting for certainty. Over the next few days, Ethan arranged quiet interviews, encrypted transmissions, and off-the-record confessions. Jasmine sat across from prosecutors, voice calm, spine straight. She told them about the warehouse matches, the money she was offered to lose and the night she didn't. About the girl in the wheelchair. About Damian's threats. They listened and believed. Outside the building, cameras began to hover. News vans circled. Jasmine became more than a mother, more than a bodyguard. She became a symbol. And symbols were always in danger. That weekend, the marble ballroom glittered like a crystal cathedral at the Blackwell Gala. The city's elite gathered in black ties and floor-length gowns. Ethan wore navy velvet. Jasmine wore strength in a dress he'd sent with no note. Whispers followed her like perfume. Is that her? The bodyguard? The one from the news? But none of it touched her. Because across the room, Ethan raised his glass and toasted not to mergers or earnings, but courage. To those who fight battles no one sees, he said. To those who stand in shadows and still manage to shine. He looked at her, then only her. After, on the rooftop terrace above the ballroom, Jasmine exhaled into the city air. Was that for me? She asked, not quite looking at him. All of it, he said. She turned. You're falling into this too fast. I've been falling for a while. Ethan, I'm not asking for forever, he said gently. Just now. Just this breath. She let it out slowly, then hold it carefully. And he did. But the night didn't end quietly. When they returned to the penthouse, the lock had been tampered with. A glass on the counter moved a shadow where none should have been. Jasmine swept the apartment and found it. A locket. Her old one. The one she thought she'd lost years ago. Inside a photo of her and her sister. And a note. You're not the only one with something to lose. Ethan read it twice. His voice dropped. Your sister. Where is she now? Jasmine's breath caught. She disappeared 3 years ago. Changed her name. Got clean. I haven't seen her since. He took her hand. Then we find her. The search stretched across cities and weeks. Ethan activated every contact, every private investigator, every resource. Jasmine combed old message boards and followed dead numbers, until one led to a shelter in Boston. A woman there remembered a girl, said she'd left with a man who promised safety. No name, just tattoos. Snake on his forearm. Jasmine knew then. Damien has her. Ethan met her at the helipad. We leave now. Boston was colder than memory. They found the warehouse after 3 sleepless nights, tucked between shipyards and silence. Inside a makeshift ring. Men cheering, women waiting. Bets placed like curses. And in the corner, her sister. Eyes hollow, but alive. Lena. Jasmine's voice cracked. Her sister blinked. Jazz. And then chaos. Damien stepped out from the shadows. Didn't expect you to come home, he said, smiling. Jasmine stepped forward. Let her go. You're in no position to make demands. Wrong again. Ethan's voice cut through. This place is already surrounded. Sirens wailed in the distance. Damien's smile faltered. Run, Jasmine told her sister. Now. Lena didn't hesitate. Police poured in. Damien tried to flee. Jasmine caught him before the door. One punch. Years of fury. A lifetime of silence. He fell. 2 weeks later, the trial began. Jasmine testified. Her sister, too. Victims lined up. Stories spilled like long-held rain. And Damien Knox, once untouchable, was finally seen for what he truly was. The morning after the verdict, Jasmine stood at the edge of Central Park, holding Ethan's hand. Tyson and Naya chased pigeons nearby, their laughter, a lullaby of freedom. You never gave up, she whispered. I never will. She turned to him. What now? He smiled. Now we live, and if you'll let me know, we would love to. She laughed. Is that your version of a proposal? Not yet, he said, but I'm practicing. And in that moment, under the forgiving light of morning, Jasmine Carter finally let herself believe. Some battles don't leave you broken. Some leave you whole. Autumn painted Manhattan in tones of amber and fire. Leaves whispered beneath passing heels, soft as secrets, and the chill in the air carried the promise of endings, or perhaps beginnings. Jasmine Carter sat in the window nook of Ethan Blackwell's library, her knees drawn to her chest, a worn copy of James Baldwin open in her lap. The morning light brushed the pages with gold, but she hadn't turned one in nearly 20 minutes. Her thoughts were tangled in things unspoken. Behind her, the fireplace flickered quietly. Across the room, Ethan stood near a tall shelf, running a finger along the spines of unread books, stealing glances at the woman who had shaken the foundation of everything he thought he understood about power, pain, and love. He cleared his throat softly. You've been quiet since Boston. Jasmine looked up. Her eyes were gentle but distant. I'm just trying to remember how to live without looking over my shoulder. Ethan crossed the room slowly, his footsteps absorbed by the thick Persian rug. You don't have to rush back into anything. There's no clock here. She smiled faintly. The world doesn't wait for women like me. He sat beside her close, but not touching. Then we'll stop the world. The following week marked the reopening of the children's school. Tyson and Naya were giddy, their backpacks bouncing as they dashed down the apartment hallway. Jasmine watched them go, heartful, nerves twisting. Are you nervous they won't fit in? Ethan asked from behind, pulling on a wool overcoat. I'm nervous I won't, she admitted. He chuckled. You've already changed more lives here than you realize. She arched an eyebrow. Yours included. His smile softened, especially mine. At Blackwell Global, Jasmine resumed her duties, though now she was more than a bodyguard. Her role had expanded unofficially. She knew the rhythm of the building better than anyone, anticipated shifts in energy, and understood when a glance meant danger or silence meant preparation. Her presence had become indispensable. Still, whispers followed her. Not the same as before. These were quieter, uncertain. Is she with him? Maybe she saved his life, but what's she still doing here? She's not even Ivy League. Jasmine heard them all, but she walked through them like wind through dry leaves, never stopping, never bending. One afternoon in the boardroom, after a tense investor presentation, a guest speaker, a silver-haired executive from London, turned to Ethan. Who's the woman who stands outside like a sentinel? Ethan didn't hesitate. She's the one who watches the doors that everyone else forgets to lock. That evening, Ethan arrived home early. He found Jasmine in the kitchen, flour on her hands, the twins rolling dough under her instruction. He leaned against the doorway, captivated. You cook? He asked, surprised. Survival skill, she replied without looking up. Boxing teaches discipline. Motherhood teaches improvisation. Nia held up a crooked, half-formed dumpling. We're making Mommy's special recipe. Ethan stepped in, removed his jacket, and rolled up his sleeves. Then teach me. Jasmine paused, her fingers mid-fold. Really, I've conquered boardrooms. Surely I can master dough. It was a lie, of course. His dumplings were tragic. But the laughter that filled the kitchen that night was the kind that made walls remember. After the children went to bed, Jasmine stepped onto the balcony. The air was crisp, the city below, glowing like a constellation. Ethan joined her, bringing 2 mugs of tea. She accepted one, grateful for the warmth. Your mom called today, he said. Jasmine tilted her head. She asked if you'd thought about visiting her in Georgia for Thanksgiving. Jasmine exhaled. I don't know. I left that life behind. She says she misses you and that she was wrong. Jasmine looked away. She was wrong. But maybe I was too. Ethan was silent for a beat. Then maybe it's not about right or wrong anymore. It may be time. She nodded slowly. Maybe. 2 days later, Jasmine received an envelope on her desk. No name, no logo. Inside, a single photo. Ethan, at a boardroom table. A red target was inked across his chest. No note, just a threat. She locked the office, called the head of security, then Ethan. His voice was calm. Do what you need to. I trust you. She did. Within an hour, the building was swept. Footage reviewed. An unauthorized visitor had entered the lobby, disguised as a caterer. They'd left no trace except the photo. Jasmine's jaw clenched. Someone's not done yet. The head of security frowned. Could be a remnant of Damien's network. Or someone else entirely, she murmured. That night, Ethan confronted her. I'm not afraid to die, Jasmine. But I am so scared you'll push me away trying to save me. She turned sharply. This isn't about pride. It's about protection. I know. But protection doesn't have to mean isolation. She swallowed hard. Every time I let someone in, they leave. Or they get hurt. He stepped closer. I'm still here. Her voice cracked. I don't want to lose you. He cupped her face gently. Then stop trying to pretend you don't need me. And in the quiet that followed, she let herself lean in. Just enough. The next day, Jasmine began her own investigation. She called in favors from her past life, people who owed her and feared her. She visited Jim's underground spots, even corners she'd sworn off for good. At a rundown ring in Queens, a man named Rocco whispered a name, Solace. She runs hits, low profile, high end, leaves no digital footprint. Why go after Ethan? Because someone paid her to. Who? Rocco hesitated. Jasmine's eyes hardened. Rocco. She goes where the money leads. But rumor is, she doesn't work without a personal vendetta. That narrowed the list. Only a few people had the money and motive to want Ethan gone. Back at Blackwell, Ethan was reviewing international expansions when Jasmine walked in. You need to see this. She handed him a dossier she'd compiled. Photos, names, background on Solace. A woman in her late 30s, ex-military, vanished 5 years ago. Her targets were always linked to betrayal, financial, emotional, familial. Ethan studied the images. She's meticulous. Lethal, Jasmine corrected. Do we know who hired her? No. But I have a theory. That night they dined at a private rooftop restaurant. Ethan had rented the entire space for security reasons. Jasmine sat across from him, distracted. You think it's someone from inside, he said. She nodded. Someone who feels wronged. Maybe an ex-partner, a board member, even someone you turned down. Ethan thought. There was someone. Harper Laird. We dissolved her fund after irregularities. She vowed revenge. She's worth looking into. He reached across the table. We'll look into it together. By week's end, Jasmine had confirmation. Harper Laird had transferred a significant sum to an offshore account matching Solace's pattern. The case was building. But time was slipping. That Friday, Tyson came home with a note. It was unsigned. Your mom can't protect everyone. Jasmine froze. The game had changed. She packed her bags that night. Where are you going? Ethan asked. To end this. Not alone. I have to. Ethan blocked the door. Then I'm coming with you. She exhaled. You're not just a client anymore. I was never just that. Their eyes locked. Then stay close, she said. Always, he replied. Together they tracked Solace to a secluded estate in the Catskills, rented under a false identity. They arrived at dawn, the world still hushed with sleep. Jasmine moved like a shadow. Ethan followed, and every step was weighted in trust. Inside the estate was silent until a voice rang out. I wondered when you'd find me. Solace stood in the atrium tall, composed, wearing black. I should have ended you first, Jasmine said coldly. You still might, Solace replied. But I never missed twice. The standoff was electric. Jasmine stepped forward. Who hired you? Solace smiled. What makes you think I didn't volunteer? A click echoed. From behind her coat, Jasmine pulled a wire. You're live on audio to the AG's office. Solace's expression didn't flicker, but her hands did. Outside, sirens wailed. Ethan turned to Jasmine. You knew she'd talk. She needed an audience. Back in the city, charges were filed. Harper Laird was arrested. Solace turned state's witness in exchange for a lighter sentence. The threat was neutralized. And Jasmine. She finally exhaled. A week later, on a quiet evening in the penthouse, Ethan knelt on one knee. No fanfare, no photographers. Just him, and a ring that gleamed like the future. Jasmine Carter, you saved my life. You saved my heart. Will you give me forever? Her hand trembled. Tyson and Nia stood in the hallway, eyes wide. She turned to them. What do you think? Tyson grinned. If we got cake. Ethan laughed. Jasmine whispered, yes. And the thread between them, that invisible, unbreakable bond, finally found its name. Home. Winter settled early over New York that year. Snow had not yet come, but the air carried its hush, the kind of silence that feels like breath being held. Jasmine Carter watched from the wide living room window of the penthouse, her fingers loosely wrapped around a mug of cinnamon tea. Below, the city buzzed in slow motion, muted by the fog of dusk. Behind her, her children's laughter filled the apartment, as Tyson and Nia worked on paper snowflakes, taping them to glass with giddy pride. And at the center of this fragile, beautiful calm, Ethan Blackwell stood quietly, tying the last ribbon on a box he'd hidden in the closet for weeks. It wasn't just a ring now. It was a beginning. Neither thought they deserved, but both had chosen to believe in anyway. A week had passed since Jasmine said yes. The world hadn't slowed, but something inside her had. A sense of steadiness she hadn't felt since she was a girl, a steadiness born not of comfort, but of trust. She had fought her battles. Now she was ready to grow. But real love wasn't all whispered I do's and starlit glances. It was taxes and breakfast cereal. It was a compromise. It was ghosts returning when you thought they'd been buried for good. They met with his estate manager the morning after Ethan's quiet proposal. There were logistics now. Paperwork, prenups, legal teams whispering behind mahogany desks. I don't want your money, Jasmine said flatly, scanning the document. Ethan took her hand. This isn't about distrust. It's about clarity, security, for you, for the twins. She looked at him. You're protecting me even now. Is that so wrong? No, she whispered. It's just new. Later that week, Jasmine took the twins to Harlem to visit their old neighborhood. The air smelled of fried food and old radio music. Familiar, honest, real. They stopped by their former landlord's deli. Mr. Cormack, now older, slower, but still sharp-eyed, stepped out from behind the counter. Well, if it isn't the champ, he grinned. And her shadow squad. Nia beamed. We're going to be in a wedding, he chuckled. I always knew your mom was destined for more than these cracked sidewalks. Jasmine's smile faltered. I'm not leaving this behind, she said. Just carrying it with me. And she meant it. At Blackwell Global, the shift was subtle. Where once Jasmine had been watched, now she was respected. Where her presence had once sparked curiosity, now it stirred admiration. She hadn't changed, only revealed. The board approved a new position for her Director of Executive Security and Crisis Strategy. Her salary doubled. Her name was printed on the letterhead. Ethan made the announcement himself. She saw danger before it arrived, he said to the room. She kept me alive, not just in body, but in integrity. She's not just the future of our security. She is the future of this company. Jasmine sat quietly in the back, her face unreadable. But her heart, it roared. That night she stood on the balcony again. Her thoughts drifted like snow that hadn't yet fallen. Ethan came beside her, sliding a hand into hers. You okay? She nodded. It's strange. When I was fighting to survive, I never pictured what came after. And now I see something else. He leaned in. Tell me. She turned to him, eyes soft but certain. Peace. Not the kind you run to, the kind you build. He kissed her then, not like a promise, but like the fulfillment of one. As wedding planning began, Ethan suggested a private ceremony. Quiet, intimate, in Tuscany or Lake Como. But Jasmine surprised him. "I want Harlem," she said. He blinked. "Really?" She smiled. "There's a community center on 145th, the same one where I trained when I was a teenager. They've just rebuilt it. I want our vows to echo in the walls that saved me." Ethan nodded, his voice caught. "Then Harlem it is." News of the wedding leaked. Tabloids spun their tales from single mother to CEO's bride, Blackwell's bodyguard lover, the Cinderella from Harlem. But Jasmine didn't flinch. Let them talk. She knew her truth, and she was done hiding it. One afternoon, while fitting her dress, a sleek design of ivory silk with subtle gold embroidery, her sister Lena walked into the room holding Jasmine's shoes. "You look like royalty," Lena whispered. Jasmine turned, tears gathering. "I look like survival," she said, "and maybe hope." They hugged, their shadows layered against the soft light. "Damien would hate this," Lena whispered with a grin. Jasmine smirked. "Then I must be doing it right." The night before the wedding, Ethan surprised her with a letter. It wasn't typed. It wasn't perfect. Just his handwriting. Honest. A little uneven. "Jasmine, I never knew how lonely my world was until you walked in. You didn't fill a void, you taught me how to rebuild the parts I'd neglected. You are not my weakness. You are my center, my clarity, my storm. Whatever happens tomorrow, or 100 tomorrows from now, I choose you. In fear, in fire, in quiet. Forever isn't long enough." "Ethan," she cried, but they were the softest tears she had ever known. The wedding day arrived like a dream wrapped in sunlight. The community center had been transformed. White curtains hung from the rafters. Gold lanterns floated above, and jasmine flowers lined the aisle in quiet tribute. Nia tossed petals like confetti. Tyson held the rings with solemn pride. And when Jasmine walked in, every breath in the room paused. Her dress shimmered like truth. Ethan stood at the altar stunned. He had seen galaxies in telescopes, fortunes in ledgers, but he had never seen anything like her. Their vows were not scripted, just spoken. Jasmine's voice trembled. "I didn't believe in second chances. I didn't believe in safety. Then you came. You waited. You stayed. You never made me small. You saw me in full." Ethan's eyes glistened. "You taught me that strength isn't always loud. That love isn't ownership, it's permission. To heal. To be seen. To be held." They kissed beneath a ceiling that once heard the cries of children learning to fight. Now it heard the sound of two warriors choosing peace. The reception spilled into the street. Neighbors danced. Journalists snapped photos. But it didn't matter. They were in their own orbit. Later, when the moon rose and laughter quieted, Jasmine and Ethan snuck away to the rooftop. She kicked off her heels. He loosened his tie. They looked out over Harlem. "I never thought this place could hold so much beauty," Ethan murmured. Jasmine leaned into him. "It always did. You just had to see it through the right eyes." At midnight, a car arrived to take them to the airport. Tuscany awaited. But Jasmine paused on the sidewalk, her fingers brushing Ethan's sleeve. One more thing. She opened her clutch, pulling out 2 folded sheets of paper. "Adoption papers," she said. "Tyson and Nia, if you want to." Ethan looked at her, overwhelmed. "I would be honored." They signed them under a street lamp. No fanfare. Just ink. Just love. And when the car drove off, the snow finally began to fall. Not in chaos, but like a blessing. In Tuscany, they woke late and slept early. They walked barefoot through vineyards. They overate, kissed in the rain. And every night, Ethan wrote a sentence in a leather-bound journal Jasmine had given him. A sentence about her. Today she taught me how to kneel in joy. Today she danced like a secret finally told. Today I realized I never knew love until she held my name like it was safe. On the final night under a blanket of stars, Jasmine asked, "Do you think forever really exists?" Ethan smiled, brushing a curl from her forehead. "It does, but only when you fight for it." She nodded, leaning her head on his chest. And in that quiet between their breathing and the slow rustle of grape leaves, they didn't need to speak, because forever had already begun. Spring arrived like a whisper through the trees, brushing petals along Central Park's walkways, coaxing warmth from the earth with patient fingers. The city stirred with a gentler rhythm, and so did Jasmine Carter's life, no longer surviving, not quite ordinary, but something in between. It was a Tuesday when Jasmine stood before the mirror in their new brownstone on West 88th, adjusting the collar of her blouse with the calm precision of a woman who had earned her mornings. Light from the tall windows bathed her in gold, and behind her, Ethan watched from the doorway, a slow smile tugging at his lips. "You still check yourself like you're heading into battle," he murmured. She turned, lips curving. "Habit. Beautiful one." Their new home was quieter than the penthouse nestled between ivy-covered facades and children's laughter echoing from the playground nearby. Jasmine had chosen it, not because it was grand, but because it felt like breath, like roots, the kind of place where feet could rest and hearts could wander safely. Nia had already turned the guest room into an art studio, complete with glitter trails and sticky notes that said things like, "Mommy is queen, and Ethan is okay too." Tyson had joined the neighborhood soccer team, much to Jasmine's reluctant amusement. He wasn't fast, but he was strategic. "I'm the coach on the field," he declared one evening, chewing macaroni with great purpose. Ethan said, "You get that from your mom," reaching for Jasmine's hand under the table. Jasmine's work had evolved again. While she still oversaw security strategy at Blackwell Global, she had begun mentoring young women from Harlem, creating a program through the community center that combined self-defense, life planning, and emotional resilience. "You don't just protect your body," she told the girls. "You preserve your story." She taught in a soft voice and with steel eyes, and the girls listened. One afternoon, a girl named Alani stayed behind. "My mom says I shouldn't dream too big. Life hits you harder if you expect more." Jasmine crouched to eye level. "Dreaming doesn't make the fall worse. It makes the climb worth it." Alani's eyes welled up, and Jasmine once again saw her younger self, fists clenched, heart half-hardened, but no longer alone. Meanwhile, Ethan had started writing. Not memos, not speeches, but essays. Pieces about leadership, privilege, and love that didn't sound like a CEO, but like a man unlearning his armor. A major magazine picked up one piece titled "The Softness of Power." When asked what inspired it, he said, "My wife." The editor had wanted to cut the line. He refused. Life had its rhythm now. But even symphonies break sometimes. One evening while reading in bed, Jasmine received a message. "But no number. I know where your sister is. She's not safe." She sat up slowly, heart thudding. She'd spoken to Lena that morning. Everything had been fine, or so it seemed. She replied, "Who is this?" No answer. She didn't wake Ethan. Not yet. Instead, she rose, stepped into the quiet hallway, and called Lena. Voicemail. She tried again. Still nothing. By morning, she told Ethan everything. He didn't hesitate. "I'll alert my team. We'll track her last known movement." But quietly, Jasmine insisted. "If this is real, I don't want to draw attention." Ethan nodded. "Then we move into the shadow." What they found wasn't dramatic. No blood, no screams. Just Lena's apartment door slightly ajar. Her purse left behind, a cup of tea cold on the counter. The police took the report. But Jasmine knew. This wasn't random. For days there was silence. Jasmine still taught her girls. I still packed lunchboxes and met with board members. But her mind was elsewhere. Ethan watched her. He let her lead. But he stayed closer than ever. "You don't have to pretend you're made of steel," he whispered one night. "I'm not pretending," she said. He kissed her shoulder. "But you're allowed to bend." Then came the break. A camera at a train station in Yonkers captured Lena, disoriented, following someone off screen. Jasmine froze the frame. The tattoo. A snake, winding down the arm. Not Damien, but one of his former enforcers, Jasmine whispered. "I should have known someone would try to finish what he started." Ethan's voice was calm. "Then we finish it first." They followed the trail north to a quiet cabin in the Adirondacks, registered under a name connected to an old underground syndicate. This time, Jasmine didn't wait for backup. She and Ethan arrived at dawn, the fog thick as breath. Inside they found Lena, drugged but alive, and the man gone. But he'd left something behind, a photo. Jasmine holding Nia's hand at a bookstore. A warning. Back home, Lena recovered slowly. Jasmine sat beside her every night. "I'm tired of running," Lena whispered, "but I don't know how to be anything else." Jasmine took her hand. "Then we'll learn together." In the weeks that followed, security increased. The family moved carefully, quietly, but they refused to hide. Nia painted new murals. Tyson scored his first goal. Jasmine laughed again. And one evening, Ethan found her watching the sunset, eyes shining. "You're thinking," he said. "I'm remembering. Remembering what it felt like not to trust the light." He wrapped his arms around her. "And now I know better. The light doesn't promise peace, but it dares us to believe in it anyway." That spring, they planted a garden in the Brownstones' tiny backyard. It wasn't much, just a few raised beds and a stubborn rose bush. But Jasmine poured her hands into the soil like it held forgiveness. Ethan watched her one morning, kneeling in the dirt, hair tied back, cheeks flushed with sun. "Never thought I'd see you barefoot in compost," he teased. She grinned. "That's because you never saw me after the fight. This is who I used to be before the bruises and scars." He crouched beside her. "Then let's meet her again every day." On the anniversary of their wedding, they didn't throw a party. Instead, they invited just family. Lena, Tyson, and Nia, their closest neighbors. They cooked together, danced under string lights, read poems aloud. Jasmine recited one by Lucille Clifton. "Celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed." And everyone stood in silence, until applause erupted. That night, Ethan handed Jasmine a new journal. He said, "I've written you a page for every week we've been married." She opened it. Inside, his scrawl danced across the pages. "She kisses like someone who has walked through fire. She mothered me without ever treating me like a child. She doesn't believe in rescue, but she rescues everyone. She is not a chapter. She is the ink." Jasmine closed the journal, overwhelmed. "You make me feel eternal," she whispered. He kissed her gently. "Because you are." Spring turned to summer, and the garden bloomed. Summer arrived not like a storm, but like a gentle confession unfolding over the city, with the golden ease of sun-drenched sidewalks and laughter trailing behind bicycles. The brownstone on West 88th bloomed with jasmine vines, and the scent of lavender drifting from the garden that now pulsed with life. Inside, Jasmine Carter moved through the kitchen barefoot, a linen apron tied loosely around her waist, her fingers damp from shelling peas. The air was thick with warmth, and the slow simmer of something on the stove, something homegrown, seasoned with memory. She hummed low, a song she barely remembered the name of, but one her mother used to sing on long, sticky afternoons in Georgia. Behind her, Ethan stepped in quietly, briefcase in hand, hair tousled from the wind. He paused momentarily, not because she hadn't noticed him, but because he wanted to watch. His warrior, his wife, his quiet miracle. "You're going to spoil me," he said softly. She turned, eyebrow raised. Too late for that. He kissed her forehead, setting his briefcase on the bench by the wall. "The board meeting ran long," he added. "But I slipped out when I remembered you were making your grandmother's stew. Slipped out of your own board meeting." He shrugged. Priorities. Later that evening, they sat on the back porch, legs tangled on a wicker couch. The twins sprawled on a blanket nearby, playing cards under the soft glow of string lights. Lena sat at the garden's edge, humming while trimming rose bushes with quiet reverence. It was peaceful. So peaceful, it almost felt foreign. "Do you ever feel like something's coming?" Jasmine asked softly. Ethan's arm tightened around her. "What do you mean?" "Like, life has been too good, too quiet." He kissed her temple. "That's called healing, Jazz. It feels unfamiliar because you fought so long that you forgot what peace sounds like." She let out a breath. "It's beautiful, but also terrifying. Then we face it together." 2 days later, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a message. A real letter, handwritten in looping cursive on creamy paper. The envelope was unmarked, save for one word, Jasmine. She opened it slowly. "I never wanted to leave you, but I had to. You were always the strongest of us, even when we pretended otherwise. There's something you need to know. Something I couldn't say until now." The signature was a single initial. M. Jasmine's breath caught. Maya. Her cousin. Her best friend. Her first sparring partner. The one who disappeared over a decade ago without a trace. Gone. Lost to addiction, to the streets, to the kind of silence Jasmine had never known how to break. Ethan found her on the front steps, staring at the letter. "Maya's alive," she whispered. His eyes widened. "What?" "She's alive. And she wants to meet. When tomorrow? Noon. No address. Just a train station outside the city. Track 9. Ethan paused. "Do you think it's real? I know her handwriting. And I know her silence." He nodded. "Then we go." The next day they arrived early. Jasmine wore a simple white blouse and jeans, her hair in a braid. She looked like the girl Maya would remember. The train came and went. People filtered in and out. No sign. Until a soft voice said, "Jazz." Jasmine turned, and there she was. Older, thinner. But the eyes, those same sharp, mischievous eyes. Maya. They fell into each other's arms, wordless. The kind of embrace that speaks across years and regret. They sat at a cafe near the platform. Maya sipped tea with trembling hands. "I thought you were dead," Jasmine said quietly. "I thought I was too," Maya replied. "But I got clean 2 years ago, and I've been watching from a distance." Jasmine frowned. "Watching what? You? The trial, the headlines, the wedding. You should have come sooner. I didn't think I deserved to." Jasmine reached across the table. "We all carry scars, but we don't get to give up on being loved." Maya stayed with them that night. Nia made her a bracelet out of yarn. Tyson asked a million questions. Lena wept quietly in the hallway. That evening, Ethan stepped onto the porch where Jasmine sat watching the stars. "She looks like you," he said. "She was my mirror," Jasmine replied, "before the world cracked us. This may be your time to stitch the pieces back. She nodded. That's what this season is about. Mending, restoring, writing what was never written. Over the next few weeks, Maya settled into the neighborhood. She began volunteering at the community center, teaching dance to the younger girls. She was patient, gentle, and though her voice sometimes trembled, it carried truth. She reminds me of you, one of the girls whispered to Jasmine. She reminds me of who I used to be, Jasmine replied, and who I still am. One Sunday, the whole family took a trip to the beach. It was spontaneous, barefoot, joyful. They packed sandwiches, laughed at sand in the wrong places. Ethan forgot sunscreen and turned the color of toast. Jasmine stood ankle-deep in the surf as the sun dipped low, watching the twins build a crooked castle. Maya stood beside her. I always thought you'd hate me, Maya said. I did, Jasmine admitted. But I missed you more. Maya smiled. That could be what saved me. That night, Jasmine tucked the twins into bed. As she turned to leave, Tyson whispered, Mom, yes, baby. Is it okay if we're happy now? She froze, then smiled. Yes, she said. It's more than okay. It's what we've been fighting for. In late August, Maya received a letter of her own, an invitation to speak at a recovery conference. She panicked, tried to decline, but Jasmine took her hand. You have a voice. Use it. And Maya did. She stood on stage in a navy dress Jasmine had lent her hands, shaking, voice cracking, but she told her story, and people listened. Afterwards, Jasmine pulled her into an embrace. You didn't just survive, she whispered. You became someone worth surviving for. Ethan watched them from a distance. Later that night, he wrote in his journal, Today, I witnessed the resurrection of love through the courage of forgiveness. Today, Jasmine smiled like the storm had truly passed. Today, I understood what grace means. As summer wound down, the brownstone filled with quiet again. Maya found a small apartment nearby. Lena took a part-time job teaching GED classes. The kids returned to school. And Jasmine. One morning, she sat on the porch with her tea, breathing in the softness. There were no letters, no threats, just birdsong, just peace. And in that silence, Jasmine finally heard what she'd waited for her whole life, the sound of nothing missing. Autumn returned to New York like a soft, contemplative, golden old soul. Trees along West 88th turned the color of burnt sugar and rust, their leaves falling like quiet prayers onto the sidewalks below. In the brownstone, jasmine still bloomed stubbornly in the corners of the garden, defying the coming chill. Jasmine Carter had always admired that kind of defiance that didn't shout, but stayed rooted. Choose grace over spectacle. And lately, that's how she had been living too. Not in hiding, but in harmony. Ethan's mornings had slowed since summer. He no longer rushed out the door with a briefcase in one hand and a phone pressed to his ear. Instead, he brewed Jasmine's tea first, kissed her shoulder in the kitchen. I walked the twins to school when meetings were allowed. He'd learned something profound in the simplicity, that power meant little without presence. Jasmine had taken to journaling again, not with the urgency of survival, but with the curiosity of a woman rediscovering herself in peacetime. Her entries were filled with fragments, memories, recipes, snippets of conversations with the twins, lessons from the girls at the community center. One line written in uneven ink read, "I am not waiting for the next storm. I am lighting candles for the calm I have earned." But peace, even when earned, is never permanent. And sometimes the past doesn't knock, it seeps in through a crack you forgot to seal. It began with a phone call. Not threatening, not dramatic, just unfamiliar. A woman's voice. Soft, controlled. Is this Jasmine Carter? Yes. My name is Celeste Rain. I'm a journalist with The Collective. Jasmine's stomach tightened. I'm not interested in interviews. I'm not looking for a feature. I'm looking for the truth. About what? About your mother. Jasmine's breath caught. My mother. I believe she was involved in something. Decades ago. Something bigger than anyone realized. And I believe she did it to protect you. That night, Jasmine didn't mention the call. Not yet. She needed space, needed to think, and needed to walk. She told Ethan she was heading to the bookstore. Instead, she walked the city for hours, retracing old routes from childhood. Past the school she dropped out of, the diner where she worked nights, the gym that taught her how to fight. And then she stood in front of a faded brown building in East Harlem, the one her mother had cleaned for decades. The super recognized her. Little Jazz. My God. You're all grown. He let her in without question. Inside, the air smelled like pine cleaner and old wallpaper. The past. And beneath it, something else. A locked drawer in her mother's old room, long untouched. The key was still where it had always been. Inside, a letter. A photograph. A sealed envelope labeled, "Only if she asks." Jasmine returned home after midnight. Ethan was waiting, quiet worry in his eyes. She handed him the items without a word. They sat on the living room rug, legs crossed like teenagers, moonlight spilling between them. The photograph was black and white. A group of women. Strong, serious. Marching. At the center, her mother. The letter was short, written in her mother's delicate hand. If you're reading this, it means the truth matters more than my silence. I did what I had to for you, for all the daughters yet to be born. There are things I never told you. I was part of something once. A resistance. Not the kind in books, but the kind that hides in laundromats and soup kitchens. We helped women escape abuse, poverty, and injustice. We did what the system wouldn't. If anyone comes asking, be careful. Some truths are weapons in the wrong hands. Jasmine exhaled slowly. I thought I knew her. Ethan reached for her hand. Now you can finally meet her. The next morning, Jasmine met with Celeste Rain, a tall woman, thoughtful eyes, voice like velvet wrapped around dynamite. They spoke in a quiet cafe. I've been researching a network from the 1980s. Women who created underground routes for other women, like a modern-day safe house system. Jasmine nodded slowly. And my mother. She wasn't just part of it. She helped fund it. With money she made cleaning offices, selling handmade quilts, and even boxing bets placed in your father's name. Jasmine blinked. I didn't know my mother ever touched a ring. She didn't fight, Celeste said. But she taught others how to survive. And how to leave. Jasmine's voice was barely a whisper. She saved them. Celeste nodded. She saved more than she let on. But now her name is in danger. Some are trying to discredit the network. Call it criminal. Rewrite it as exploitation. Jasmine clenched her jaw. Then we won't let them. Over the next 2 weeks, Jasmine and Celeste worked together, researching, interviewing survivors, gathering testimonies. Jasmine began speaking publicly, not as the CEO's wife, not as a survivor of Damien Knox, but as her mother's daughter. At a city conference on community justice, she stood in a crimson blouse, voice unwavering. My mother wasn't perfect, but she chose to lift women instead of locking them down. She gave us the blueprint for survival, quietly, powerfully, and without asking for thanks. Ethan watched from the audience, his heart swelling. Lena wiped tears. Maya stood with her hand over her heart. And Nia, watching from home, whispered, "That's my mommy." But progress rarely comes without pushback. A week after the conference, a smear article appeared in a national paper. Radical Roots. The hidden militancy behind Jasmine Carter's mother. It accused the women's network of harboring fugitives, of illegally transporting children, of coercion disguised as charity. Jasmine didn't flinch. She released a statement that went viral. If saving women from violence makes us radicals, then may we all be guilty. If standing between children and abuse makes us dangerous, then I hope we never grow safe. Public support flooded in. Ethan held her that night. "You're not just your mother's daughter," he whispered. "You're her echo, her evolution." The following weeks were a whirlwind of panels, interviews, and meetings with lawmakers. Jasmine helped draft a proposal for a city grant to fund a modern haven modeled after her mother's network. When it passed, she didn't cry. She lit a candle on the porch and let the silence speak. One morning, as the first frost kissed the edges of the garden, Jasmine stood at the fence, watching the vines curl tighter. Tyson came out in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Mom." "Yes, baby." "Do heroes ever get tired?" She smiled, pulling him close. "All the time. But they still fight only the ones worth remembering." He nodded against her side. "Then you're the best one ever." And Jasmine, for the first time in weeks, let herself cry. Not from pain, but from the sheer breathtaking weight of legacy. That night, Ethan wrote in his journal, "She no longer walks in the shadow of storms. She walks in the light between them." Her mother gave her a story. Jasmine turned it into a movement. She doesn't fight to be remembered. She fights so no one else is forgotten. And in the quiet of that fall evening, as leaves spiraled gently to the ground, Jasmine Carter stood taller than she ever had. Not because of who she had married, not because of what she had survived, but because of who she had chosen to become. Winter returned, quietly folding itself over the city like a well-worn quilt. Snow came early, blanketing brownstones and fire escapes in soft white lace. The streets whispered under boots and laughter, and everything in New York seemed to pause just long enough for people to remember how to breathe. Inside the warm haven of the Carter Blackwell home, the scent of cinnamon bread rose from the oven. Tyson and Nia built blanket forts in the living room, while Ethan stood at the window, one hand in his pocket, watching snowflakes spiral like secrets. Behind him, Jasmine walked in, wrapping her arms around his waist. He leaned back into her, his body memorizing hers all over again. "Is it strange," he asked softly, "that this feels like the beginning?" She smiled into his shoulder. "Maybe because it is." The grant Jasmine had helped pass transformed quickly into reality. Over the last month, she had worked with city leaders and private donors to establish 3 prototype safe spaces, modern sanctuaries for women and children escaping violence. Not shelters, she insisted, but launch pads. "These places aren't where you end up," she told a room of skeptical funders. "They're where you begin again." And they believed her. Because Jasmine never asked for pity, she offered a blueprint and fire. But while the city buzzed with her impact, Jasmine felt something quietly shifting within her. Not unrest, not fear, but a calling she hadn't been able to name until one evening, when she stood alone in the garden brushing snow off the last withered jasmine vine. She turned to Ethan, who had just stepped onto the porch. "I want another child," she said. He blinked, taken slightly off guard. "You're sure I'm not afraid anymore?" she said. Ethan walked down the steps and took her face in his hands. "Then let's make room for more love." Weeks passed. Life softened. Lena started dating a gentle teacher named Roman. Maya published a short memoir that went viral. Tyson won a school leadership award for his anti-bullying project. Nia choreographed a dance that left her whole class in tears. Jasmine watched it all unfold, like a living mural painted by healing hands. And then, just as the new year approached, Jasmine found herself in a clinic bathroom, staring at two pink lines. Pregnant. A laugh bubbled in her chest, quiet, astonished. This time there was no fear, only joy. She told Ethan over dinner. He dropped his fork. "You're serious?" She nodded. He stood so quickly that he knocked over his chair, then pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck. He whispered that I didn't know I could want something more than I already had. They waited a week before telling the twins. Nia screamed. Tyson cried, then immediately began crafting a list of names. If it's a girl, Nia declared, we name her Hope. Tyson frowned. Or Nova, like a star exploding. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Let's maybe wait until we know the gender. But Jasmine already knew. In her bones, in her blood. A girl. The kind of girl who would change everything. Again. By spring, Jasmine's belly began to show. Ethan couldn't stop touching her. At night, he read poetry to the baby. Not to impress, but because he wanted her to grow up knowing language could be soft and firm at once. Jasmine kept working carefully, intentionally. And when she stepped onto stages now, the crowd didn't just see a speaker. They saw a future in a woman who had rewritten her own body. One afternoon, Celeste Rain interviewed Jasmine for a documentary. The final question was simple. If you could speak to the girl you used to be, the one standing in front of the broken gym mirror with bruised knuckles, what would you say to her now? Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. Then I'd say, you were never broken. You were preparing. Summer bloomed fast that year. Their garden exploded with life tomatoes, basil, and sunflowers tall enough to tickle the roofline. Tyson built a bee box. Nia hosted her first lemonade stand. Lena got engaged. And Jasmine, 9 months pregnant, waddled around with fire in her eyes and a smirk that said, "Don't underestimate me just because I'm glowing." Labor began on a thunderstorm night. The city moaned with wind and rain, as if mourning something unsaid. But in the quiet corners of a hospital suite, Jasmine Carter gripped Ethan's hand and did what she'd always done. Fought, breathed, opened. And hours later, with a cry that split the storm, their daughter entered the world. Her name was Soline, French for dignity. A name Jasmine had whispered only once before to her mother years ago in a dream. Soline Carter Blackwell had her mother's eyes, her father's calm, and something else, something ancient and unbreakable. In the weeks that followed, their home overflowed, with casseroles, flowers, and lullabies, with poems pinned to fridge doors and tiny socks found in impossible places. Ethan sang off-key while changing diapers. Tyson read bedtime stories with the solemnity of a professor. Nia declared herself the official lullaby director. And Jasmine, at the center of it all, wrote in her journal, "I am not a survivor anymore. I am a mother, a wife, a builder of legacy. And I am not afraid." One evening, weeks after Soline's birth, Ethan and Jasmine sat on the porch. The baby slept nearby in a bassinet, swaddled like a secret. The air was warm, still fragrant, with garden jasmine. Ethan took Jasmine's hand. "What's next?" he asked. She looked out toward the horizon. "Whatever we choose," she said. "That's the forever we fought for. Not fate, not perfection. Just a choice." He nodded, then kissed the back of her hand. "And I choose you." Over and over. She leaned into his shoulder, smiling. "I choose us." There were no fireworks in the closing scenes of that season of their life. No villains lurking in shadows. No final battle. Only mornings filled with sunlight and lullabies. Only voices soft with wonder. Only the knowledge that they had rewritten every story about women like her families, like theirs, love like this. Jasmine Carter had not just survived. She had bloomed. She had built. She had become. He